This is the 7th video of the pivoting camera mount that we've been working on. In the last video, we created several sketches, which we then used to generate several individual bodies. In this video, we're going to take those bodies, combine them together, and then copy that shape and flip it over to finish off the design for the pivoting camera mount that we've been working on. The first thing that we're going to do is build in a little bit of a tolerance relief between this disc of teeth here and the body of the rest of the mount. One of the conditions that we need to be careful of when we're designing in CAD is actually this one right here along this edge, where we have kind of a circular edge here meeting a single edge. This is a challenge both in 3D printing and in CAD. So we're going to build in some tolerance by cutting away some of this part here. And so initially we're going to generate a sketch on this surface, and we can get into that by clicking on that surface and double tapping on it. And we're going to just click on this particular circular edge here, and we're going to do an offset, which we haven't done yet. But so we're going to click on this outer circle, and we're going to go into our tools and click offset. And what offset does is it just picks the edge that you have and makes a copy of it a certain distance away from the origin, or where the curve originated. So we're just going to click on this line and drag it out, and we're just going to offset it by 1 millimeter. And at this point we can use this line here to cut away this body. And so I'm going to hide I'm going to finish in my offset tool, and I'm going to hide this body here. So I'm going to go to groups, and I'm just going to move this body over into my working folder and hide my working folder. And now I'm going to take this line here, grab this area, and drag it out, and I'm just going to do a subtraction. So now I have a little bit of a relief built into my model that won't interfere with either the 3D printed part, and it's going to be a little bit easier to manage the surfaces in this model. So if I turn on my working layer, I have a little bit of a gap there, which makes everything a little bit easier to manage. At this point, we can start combining things together. And I'm going to take this toothed disc, I'm going to take my block back here, and I'm going to take this cylinder and even the top body and join them all together. So I'm going to go to my tools, I'm going to click union and click done. And now everything should be one piece. And really all we're going to do now is just some cleanup. So I'm going to turn off my sketches so that they don't get in the way. And I could even go as far as moving my pivot body here into, or rather I could turn this into my working layer. Done. And I could go and turn off my pivot body. And now we just do some cleanup. So I'm going to grab this circle, for instance, and just drag it up through the body. It doesn't have to be that long, but it doesn't really matter. So now we have a hole that goes all the way through. We can also do the same thing with this hole here and drag it. We're going to round off all of these corners so that they don't interfere when we mount these two things together. And there's a couple of different ways to do this, and it really depends on what tools you're comfortable with, and then also how you build these forms out. So I didn't have to build a block that was this large in order to get what I was trying to make here, but just in previous steps, this is what we ended up with. So there's a couple of ways to get rid of these corners, for example. One of them is I can just grab this surface and drag it, and I can remove that corner that way. I can also click on this edge here, and I could fillet that edge. And this is a 10 millimeter fillet in order for it to be even. So that matches up pretty well. One of the other things that we could do is do a sketch, or we could even click these faces here and say delete. Delete. And so those are several ways to remove those particular edges. At this point, we've accomplished most of the building here, and all we have left to do is some simple detailing. One of the things that I wanted to do was add a relief hole on this top surface so that way a screw head could sit recessed into the body of the pivot mount. So from here I could click on it, double tap the surface, and I could use my offset tool again to offset this curve. And I'm just going to offset this 4 millimeters. And from there I can extrude this down. Click done, extrude this down. And we can make this go down 6 millimeters. And we could do the same thing on the back side here. Click on that, double tap, tools, offset this 4 millimeters. Click done, drag this down 6 millimeters. At this point, the detailing's pretty much done. We could do some nice things like build a little bit of a fillet on this edge here. That's going to help a little bit with the strength of the 3D print. And we could also do a similar thing here, like reducing this edge just a little bit. They're not really critical, but it makes things look a little nicer. And that's about it. Now we've finished our model, and what I can do is select this, and I'm going to transform this and copy it. So I'm going to flip this around, and what I can do is line this up with this center hole here. And there's a number of places I could line this up with, but I know that the central axis of this model is going to be good enough for me to flip this around. So on this top surface lined up with the middle of this part. So I can click copy, and I'm just going to flip this over like that, 180 degrees. There we go. So now we have a part that is symmetrical. It's flipped over. These teeth are a little bit offset from each other so that we get a minimum angle. And so I'm going to move this handle to this edge here. And I know that originally we said these angles were 20 degrees, so I'm just going to move this 10 degrees this way, 10 degrees. Oh, and we copied that, so I'm going to undo. I'm going to turn off copy and move this 10 degrees. Like that. And now everything lines up. So we can turn everything back on, and we'll have finished our model. Go to groups, we're going to turn on our pivot shape, and we'll turn on our extrusion. So I can grab this extrusion and move it. Like that.